Hello and welcome back to Wyvern-Hearted Ink and Friends. My name is Claymore, and today we are going to be reworking on this DIY custom frame that I started in October. It has just been hanging out in my room and in the hallway of our apartment, waiting. So I decided that after my experimentation with clay, I was just going to add little clay elements. So one of the first elements that I went for were the lily pads. I really wanted to make some 3D lily pads to add to this and to kind of blend out the original piece into the further frame and mat that I created. So this is just my attempt at getting everything to be a little more cohesive. I originally painted them this like nicer, darker lily pad sort of color, and then I realized as I was looking at them and looking at the painting that in my painting originally I had made them much lighter lily pads and they had orange accents to them, so I had to basically repaint them after I did the one original layer. I realized that I needed to completely go back over everything and just do like a wash of a lighter green and then add orange to the sinuses of the plant. I will say that from this experience, I do not recommend that you try and go back to a piece years after you originally created it and try to add more to it unless you want to completely rework the piece, because I definitely think a lot differently about the way that I view color, and I have a lot better art supplies now than I did when I originally created this piece. But it was a piece that I adored, and I felt like I spent so much time on it, and I really honed a lot of skill through it. So I didn't want to completely give up on the piece after I had spent probably close to 60 to 80 hours on that one original art piece before I even added it to this frame. Taking on this task of adding to something you haven't looked at and you haven't actively worked on in a very long time, it you realize how much you've grown as an artist since you originally made it, and it's wild. Especially when I think about how often I realize that I've grown as an artist. I feel like even just a couple months, I can tell the difference between some of my art from then versus now. Specifically, I recently redid a art piece of Aniva, and I did it digitally, and originally I had done it physically. And when I redid it, I realized how wonky a lot of the line work was. And a part of it was to do with just how small of a piece I was working on, and like I just didn't have the proper pen or marker to really get the small details that I wanted to do. And so part of it was on that, but the other part of it is that clearly I wasn't thinking through the layers very well. And, you know, there are just all sorts of little things that you learn or that you grow and get better at as time moves forward and as you keep creating. So there's always room to grow as an artist. I don't think that you can ever hit like the limit of where you will stop learning. So once I finished the painting on the lily pads, I started looking into where I was going to put them, trying to figure out where they would fit on the piece. Some of the lily pads were a little bit larger than I was originally planning on, and some of them were a little smaller. And so just generally figuring out a layout before I hot glue them down. After hot gluing the bases down onto the piece and the foam mat, I made sure to add a little extra around the edges to give that water effect so that it actually looks like it's floating on water and there is some water rippling going on. I added some extra hot glue just around to kind of blend the two layers together a little bit better. Then I decided to make the clay branches and where they were extending from. Originally, I was thinking about doing this with actual sticks, but in the end, I realized that I wasn't going to be able to find branches that matched well enough that I was going to enjoy how they looked on the piece. So, as much as these don't look like real branches by any means, I think they turned out pretty good. They have that same texture and sort of general shape to them, so I didn't have to rework the painting completely. I just am adding on to the branches and making them a little more 3D and feel kind of like the lily pads, where they're blending out into the world from the piece. After completely sculpting out the branches and letting them dry for 24 hours, this is how the piece looked. I also added some cold wax medium in between the original painting and the mat to kind of blend them out a little bit better and to try and get rid of those very square rectangular edges. Now I'm just going to be gluing everything down because while I did sculpt the clay directly onto the piece, that is not a stable enough connection for them to actually stay. So this is me just gluing everything down. Some of it is hot glue, some of it is Mod Podge, just depends on how light or heavy the branch pieces were. Once I finished covering everything with Mod Podge and I let it dry, I started painting it right away, and I kind of did a mixture of several different browns in acrylics. So I just do this kind of dabbing method where I just put a bunch of chunks of paint down just to kind of generally get an idea of the basic color that I'm going for. So I did a mixture of yellow browns, red browns, more mid-neutral browns, and some greens. After getting all the colors down and letting it dry for a good day or two, I then decided to glue a bunch of moss to the branches. I felt like the branches were just too bare on their own, and I wanted it to look like somewhat dead, creepy fall, but I didn't want it to be completely barren. So I added a couple mixtures of mosses. I did some more of your standard moss, and then also the hanging moss that like hangs down from your branches. And this is kind of how it turned out. I liked the end result of adding this, but I didn't really feel like it was quite enough. It still felt quite barren to me. It didn't feel lifelike enough to me. So I went ahead and I decided later that I was going to add more. So after pondering for a while, I decided that what I wanted to add were flowers. So I went through a couple of my fake flowers that I had and looking through them, and I kind of decided on a mixture of the orchid pieces that I had and some hydrangeas, the red hydrangeas, and I kind of ripped them up and made them into more like individual flowers. And I think this is probably where I'm going to stop with adding to the original piece. Now I just have to get it in the frame. And that's probably where I'm going to end up leaving you guys off, unless I'm able to get some pictures of it in the frame. I might add those here at the end, or you might have to find them on my other social media. But that is all for editing and finalizing this piece. I am so excited with how it turned out. I feel like it's been a long transformation, but it is truly very beautiful, and it's one of the pieces that I'm most proud of that I've ever made. And yeah, so if you're interested in pieces like this, if you would like to get one for yourself, or if you know someone, or if you know a gallery that would be interested in hosting it, please leave your comments down below. You can check out my Ko-Fi shop if you're interested in buying any of the items that I make here on my channel. And until next time, stay safe out there.